Shalom Aleichem, good morning. Welcome to our viewers on Torah Anytime. I want to dedicate this year to the Lecha of Ben Zion Ben Dosa, him and his family, all the hostages and their families, all those who are wounded and their families, and the soldiers and their families, to their immediate Hashem success. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will deliver great salvation, and in Hashem that will usher in the time of the Geula, in Hashem Geula Shleima of Binyan. Beis HaMikdash Goel Tzedek Bekorov B'Yameinu Amen Ve'Amen. Amen. Something I should have said last week, but 1 week delay, not a big deal. We are now in the month of Marcheshvan. What is this name, Marcheshvan? All the names of the months came with us from Bavel, and they were adopted by Klal Yisrael and adapted into our calendar. And you must assume there's some kind of pnimius, a toichen, a mahus, to the names that Klal Yisrael decided to use. Says the Sefer Siftei Tzadik, Mamish Pilei Ploim. Marcheshvan is the same letters as Shomer Noach or Roshem Noach, meaning the impression of Noach or preserving Noach. What exactly do you have to preserve? Before Marcheshvan came along, we had the months of Elul and Tishrei. Elul is 29 fantastic days of Hachana for the Yamim Noraim, where we blew the shofar. Tfilos and Tachanunim, we said Slichos, 29 days of elevation. The following month, Tishrei, was another 29 days saturated with heavy-duty mitzvahs. We had such great mitzvahs, and in these 29 and 29, which is 58, which is the Gematria of Noach, 58 special days, 29 of Elul and 29 of Tishrei, we were so close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's why right after we finish those 58 days, we start Chodesh Marcheshvan, and we say Parshas Noach, and there at the beginning we read Et HaElokim Hisalech Noach, together with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Noach walked. Who's Noach? Noach is the 58 days. Every one of us, Et Aleph Taf is Rashi Tevos Elul and Tishrei. During Elul and Tishrei, Hisalech Noach, we walked with HaKadosh Baruch Hu for those 58 days, and that is why HaElokim Hisalech Noach, Gematria 609, Marcheshvan 609.
Say that again.
HaElokim Hisalech Noach 609. Marcheshvan 609, because we have to make sure that what happened during the Aleph Taf, the S, Elul Tishrei, is preserved with us, and that's why Marcheshvan is called Roshem Noach, Shomer Noach. The impression that Noach 58 days did on us and our neshama, we have to preserve Shomer, we have to safeguard and keep those Noach days, those 58 days in us, so Chalila, the Kedusha should not be cancelled. And we know Noach had 3 sons, which means there's going to be a hashpah for 3 different directions, a Shem, a Cham, and a Yefes. We want to make sure that our generations are Shem. In other words, they cling to the Shemos HaKedoshim, the Shomer Noach, to preserve Noach, the 58 days that we cling to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We were so connected. Esa Elokim Yisalech Noach, during Aleph Taf, during Elul and Tishrei, we have to make sure that continues, and that is our prayer that it carries over throughout the rest of the year.
According to that, it should not be called Marcheshvan then.
Mar is just because it doesn't have any yontifs in it. And it does have to be called Marcheshvan, as it wouldn't work, and you wouldn't have the letters of Roshem and Shomer Noach. Now we go to Parshas Lech Lecha. The beginning of the Parsha, HaKadosh Baruch Hu promises, Avram va'agadla shemecha, I will increase your name. Rashi on this passage says, Zehu she'oimrim Eloikei Yaakov. That is why we say, the God of Yaakov. What's the connection? Because I'm going to increase Avraham Avinu's name, therefore we have to say Eloikei Yaakov, the God of Yaakov. What's the connection? Says the Mahari Asad, Rabbi Yehuda Asad. He was in the yeshiva of Reb Mordechai Banet. He was the same generation of Chassam Sofer, and when Chassam Sofer passed away, he was the Poisek Gadol in Hungary. He wrote 50 Sfarim. Most of them were burnt and got lost during the Holocaust, but we do have Shal Tzuvas Yale Yehuda and other Sfarim. So Rabbi Yehuda Asad says, we have the Avos HaKedoshim, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Avraham is how many letters? I know it's early morning, but no big deal. 5 letters, Avraham. Yitzchak?
4.
Yaakov?
4.
5, 4, 4 is?
18.
13. In my book it's 13. Good. 13 is Gimatria Echad. 1. 1 Ribbon Shlomo. Imahos. Sarah, how many letters? That should be easy. Rivka, that's already a little harder. 4. Rachel, Leah, total 3, 3, 3 plus 4. 3, 3, 3 is 9 plus 4 is 13. 13, Echad. Echad and Echad, if you combine the matrix and the patriarchs together, Avos and Imahos, you have 26. 26 Gimatria, Yud-Kei, Vav-Kei, HaKodesh Baruch Hu. It must be kept at this number. Therefore, Rashi says, since we increased Avraham Avinu's name, it used to be Avram, 4 letters, but now it's Avraham, now we're at 26. If we were to say Yisrael, because Yaakov Avinu's name was switched, he really is called Yisrael. We should say Elokei Yisrael, but we don't. But if we would have 27, no good. So because we increased Avraham Avinu's name, so much so that in Brachos Daf Yud Gimel the Gemara says, if you call Avram, Oiver Be'asa, you're not allowed to. Once his name was switched, you must use the name Avraham. Mimele, now you're forced to go with Elokei Yaakov and not Elokei Yisrael. Otherwise, you're not going to have 26, as the names of the fathers and the mothers must be. Continuing with the same Rashi. Va'agad lashmecha zeu sheomrim Elokei Yaakov. And he continues. Va'avarecha zeu sheomrim Elokei Yitzchak. Va'agad lashmecha zeu sheomrim Yaakov. But the beginning is, not the beginning, I'm sorry. Once he says these 3 things, Yachol Yehu Choismin Bekulan, maybe we should say, end the bracha with all 3. No. Talmud Loima Veheye Bracha, Becha Choismin Velo Bahem. We're going to end with you, Avraham. What does that mean? We're going to end, Vecha Choismin, with you we're going to end. So Reb Shimon Shkop said, he explained, at the end of the Galus, there's going to be a time of great, great darkness. Look around. Great darkness. But there will be a lot of people like you, Avraham. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Avraham at the end, Becha Choismin. We're going to end the Galus with people like you. Where'd you come from? You came from a terach. You came from the greatest darkness in the world. And yet, you decided, there is a Kodesh Baruch Hu in the world and I want to cling to him. Unlike Yitzchak, unlike Yaakov, who had whom to learn from, you didn't. At the end of the Galus, it's going to be the same thing. Look around. It's such a wave. A spirit of tshuva. There was 30, 40 years ago, and I think this war, at least in the last 3 weeks, is creating such a new wave of people wanting to get closer. You know how many tzitzis are needed in the army, and how many other good things, and the chesed that's flowing. It's mamish, a spirit that people want to get close to Kodesh Baruch Hu. Becha choispin. With you, Avraham, with people like you, we're going to reveal a Kodesh Baruch Hu, yesh me'ayin, ex nihilo, out of nowhere, out of a father like a terach. That's what Reb Shimon Shkop said. The Kotzker Rebbe said, Becha choismin, what is the midah of Avraham?
Kindness.
Chesed, sheneemar, titen, chesed le'Avraham. Becha choismin. There's going to be a shortage of Torah in the world, but there's going to be so much chesed. Your chesed, Avraham Avinu, and that ushers in the Geula. Look around the last 2 weeks. What's going on? How people, the outpour of warmth and generosity by Yidden all over the world. Mamish, you see that this Divrei Rashi is Emet Hashem being fulfilled in front of our eyes, and Emet Hashem, the next step, will also be fulfilled real soon. So Avraham Avinu is leaving Haran, and suddenly the Torah decides to tell us, by the way, he was 75 years old. Who cares? You didn't tell me his shoe size, and I don't know the size of his suit, and I don't really care. But it's very important for me to know, by the way, when he's leaving Haran, he's 75 years old. Why is it so important to know that? Because 75 is not just another number. 75 is the Gimatria of Bitachon. If you want to leave everything behind you, there are some people here, I think, that left their natural surroundings.
74.
Some people left at 74, the Achana for 75. You want to leave everything that you know behind, your family, your friends, your work, the natural surroundings that you grew up in, you're familiar and comfortable with. You need major bitachon. So therefore, from the beginning, the Torah says, you know how do you do great things? How do you embark on a great journey? You take bitachon with you. The midah of bitachon is 75, and that's why the Torah says how old he was. So when you do go on this journey, Avraham Avinu decides to take ve'es kol hanefesh asher asur becharan. Rashi explains how do you exactly form souls. Es hanefesh asher asu. How do you fashion people? Avraham Avinu was megayer the anashim. He converted them in, and Sarah Imenu was megayeres the anashim. That's whom he took with him. So a convert is called a ger. What is this word? Where does it come from? What does it mean, a ger? In Hebrew, every word has an essence. There's no coincidence. It's not an arbitrary language that we decide to call a certain thing by a certain name. What is a ger? Says Rabbeinu Bechaye in his sefer Kad HaKemach. This is Rabbeinu Bechaye, the same Rabbeinu Bechaye ben Asher, who wrote Rabbeinu Bechaye al HaTorah. He is 200 years before the other Rabbeinu Bechaye, Ibn Pekuda, who wrote Choiva Salvavois. So this Rabbeinu Bechaye, whose Rebbes are the Rashba, the Ramban, Rabbeinu Yoina. Wouldn't you like to be in his place? His Rebbes are the Ramban, Rabbeinu Yoina, Rashba. So he says the word ger comes from the language or from the root of gargir. What is a gargir? A kernel. A kernel separated from the big unit. What is a ger? He's a person who left behind everything that he knows, everything that as if comprises the big unit, and he is left behind. He goes and he travels and he is on his own. Says Rabbeinu Bechaye, anyone who goes to a different place, he's a foreigner in an uncomfortable and not in his normal place, he is called a ger. Not only a person who converted from other religions to Yiddishkeit. And then he continues and he says, even the Avos HaKadoshim are called a ger. Avraham Avinu says about himself, next week, ger v'soishav anoichi imachem. I am called a ger. Yitzchak Avinu, he said, gur, a stranger, a foreigner. Yitzchak, the pasuk says, gur ba'aretz hazois. Bar Yaakov be'eretz megurei aviv. David HaMelech called himself a ger, Tehillim Kuf Yutes, ger anoichi ba'aretz. Why? Because the tzaddikim, yes, you see their bodies, they're here. But up here, they're not with us. They're somewhere over there. Say they are too, just like the convert, they are in a different place, not where they really want to be. They are like a kernel separated from the big unit. They are up there somewhere in Shamayim with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But their body happens to be here for whatever, 120 years, maybe a little more. So therefore, anyone who is in a different place, a strange place, a foreign place, is called a ger. But why is he called a ger tzedek? Person who converts is called a ger tzedek. Says Rabbeinu, the Torah Tmima, Baruch Epstein. In Kiddushin Dafayin we learn that the gerim are very strict with their observance of mitzvahs. They're very, very medactic b'mitzvahs, which means they do as if more than what they're supposed to. Extra. They go the extra mile. There's a Gemara in Baba Basra Daf Peiches, and again in Chulin Kufla Medalet, that says the word tzedek means giving in. Giving, giving something more than what you need to. As the Gemara explains there, tzedek mishelcha v'ten lo. Take from yourself and give to him. So since the gerim do extra, which means the word tzedek, they are called gerei tzedek. Tremendous chiddush. So when Avraham Avinu takes these people with him, es hanefesh asher asu b'charan, how many people are we talking about? How many people did he convert? How many did he have in his yeshiva? You hear the language of the Rambam. V'nikbetzu elav alafim urevavois. Multitudes of people, thousands, tens of thousands. Tremendous amount. Which means we were supposed to be a greater number than China. At the end, we go down to Egypt with how many people? 70? You just told me multitudes of people, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands went down, went along with Avraham Avinu. He converted them. Where did they all go?
When Avram died,
What's that?
when Avram died, they all dispersed.
Dispersed. Fine. So we should be all over. Jewish people all over the place. I don't have a problem with going down only 70 people, but where are all the Jews? He converted everybody.
He
Says-
converted them to what? To believe
To
in
Yiddishkeit,
God.
like he did.
No, but he converted to believe in God.
Good.
Not necessarily to Yiddishkeit, because there was no Yiddishkeit then. He converted them to believe in God.
Good. So they followed him. Whatever he believed in, he taught them. And they followed him, right? So they should be like him. If he ultimately becomes Jewish, they should be Jewish. Their Rebbe is Avraham Avinu. What happened to them? Says the Meshech Chochma. He brings a Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. Listen to 3 words. V'kulam, all of them, chazru lesuram. They all went sour. They all went back to where they came from. Which is a pele. We look at Avraham Avinu and we give him such accolades. Wow, Avraham. There's no one like you. It's the biggest Megayer factory in the world. Anything that moved by him, boom, he converted. Sometimes it took 5 minutes, sometimes only 4 minutes, but you're going to be converted. If you see Avraham, you're going to be converted. It's a failure. If he was in any other industry, we would say, go look for at a different job. You're not good at really what you're doing. Not 50% of what he did was not successful. V'kulam, all of them went sour. That means a total failure. In anywhere else, we would say, go look for a different thing to do. It's not really working for you in chinuch. Go somewhere else. Maybe be a doctor, be a lawyer. Chinuch is not for you. Says the Meshech Chochmah. We are not commanded to be successful. We are commanded to do, to perform. And once you do that, there's no tanya on you. There's no tanya whatsoever. In fact, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says about Avraham Avinu, Ki yada'ativ. Rashi says, Leshon Chiba, I love Avraham Avinu. Why? He teaches his household members and everyone around to do the right thing. What they're ultimately going to do is their cheshbon with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Each person in this world has b'chira chofshis. Has nothing to do with Avraham. He did what he needed to do, and he did it in the best way. He gave 100% effort. For that, he is looked as the greatest person in the world. What's going to happen later has nothing to do with him.
It's a very hard concept to...
So hard. But look at his son. 50% of his kids went sour. Look at Avraham Avinu himself. 50% of his kids went sour. His name was Ishmael. Yitzchak Avinu's 50% is called Esav. 50%! And yet we say, wow, Yitzchak. Avraham, the greatest educators in the world, has nothing to do with us. Each person walks in this world and has his own bechira chofshis and forms the connection and relationship that he wants with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. They told the Bris Kirov about a certain organization that they were doing kiyuv. And all the people afterwards wasn't successful and they all went sour. And the Bris Kirov says, wow, but at least one Shabbos when you had him, they all ate kosher and they all said Kiyah Shema Gevaldik. You would get more reward if ultimately they decided to do the right thing. But there's no claim on you. And all they request from you, from above, is that you give it your all. Once you do that, finished. So if Chas v'Sholom, a parent, is teaching his kids to do all the right things, but whatever happens and the kid decides to go off for a little while, there's no taina on the father. There's no taina on the mother. Look at Avraham Avinu, look at Yitzchak. As long as you give it your all. If you don't, there is a big taina. But as long as you do what you need to do, look at Avraham Avinu. All those people went sour. And there's a tremendous chizuk to us to know that we need to do what we need to do. What is going to ultimately happen has nothing to do with us. It's not in our hands. Rabbi Isai, 613 mitzvahs. What's the first mitzvah a Yid was ever commanded to do? Puruvu. Whose name? What was his name? Noach. Was he Jewish? I asked what was the first mitzvah a Jew was commanded to do. Noach wasn't Jewish. In fact, there's Jewish people and there's B'nai Noach. He's not such... We don't view him... By the way, Noach kept the entire Torah. But he's still not Jewish. What's the first mitzvah a Jew is commanded to perform? I'm sorry? Rosh Chodesh. Bris. Much before Rosh Chodesh and much before the Bris. Happens to be in our parsha. A little remes. First pasuk of our parsha. Lech Lecha, go to Eretz Yisrael. Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. The Yosef Rebbe says the first mitzvah a Jew was ever commanded to do, that is dependent on the machloikis whether Avraham Avinu has a status of a Ben Noach or is he a Jew. I know a sefer Tu Chalakim B'Darkei Avos was written about it. Third part is in the computer. Kodesh Baruch Hu give koyach and assistance. They should come out in Mitzvah Hashem soon. But anyways, we view him as pretty Jewish. And therefore, the first mitzvah a Jew was ever commanded to do is mitzvahs Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. And based on that, the following. I once asked Reb Chaim Kanievsky. It says in Masechet Psochim, Daf Ches Amud Aleph, Shluchei mitzvah einam nizokim. If you're going about to do a mitzvah, you will not be harmed. A special protection. In Ksubis Kuf Yud Aleph it says that anyone who walks 4 amos, every 4 amos in Eretz Yisrael is a mitzvah. Based on that, maybe we can say, anytime you're walking in Eretz Yisrael, it doesn't make a difference where you're going and what you're going for. It doesn't make a difference. You're involved in a mitzvah. If you're involved in a mitzvah, you're always protected and shielded in Eretz Yisrael. Can we say that? So Reb Chaim Kanievsky says to me, yes! If he's Shomer Torah mitzvahs, yes! He's always protected. So I said to him, oh, Rebbe, now I understand the Gemara. In that Gemara in Pesachim Daf Ches, the Gemara asks, Shluchei mitzvah will not be harmed on the way to the mitzvah. What about on the way back? Shluchei mitzvah eina nizokim behalichasan. What about bechazarasan when they go back? So they asked Rav, and he says, Lo yadana. I don't know. They asked him when the guys from the Shiva go back. Nighttime, it's dangerous, all kinds of mazikim on the way. Will they be protected? On the way to the Shiva in the morning, I know they're protected. But what about on the way back? And Rav says, Amar Rav, Lo yadana. I don't know. The Gemara continues. Amar Rabbi Eliezer, Shluchei mitzvah eina nizokim. Lo behalichasan velo bechazarasan. Rabbi Eliezer says, no, they will not be harmed. What is it? What's the machlokes here? Rav, where did he live? In Bavel. So he says, Lo yadana, I don't know. Why? I don't know why those yeshiva guys are coming back home after a long day in the yeshiva. Is it because they're hungry and they want to eat? Is it because they're tired and they want to go to sleep? They're entitled to, but they're not involved in a mitzvah, so they don't necessarily have protection. But if they're going home because they want to eat, so they'll have koyach tomorrow to learn better. If they're going home to sleep, so tomorrow they'll have more koyach to learn, then they're involved in a mitzvah, and then they will be protected. So Rav says, Lo yadana, I don't know, because I don't know each person why he goes back. But Rabbi Eliezer says, no, they will be protected. Why? Where does Rabbi Eliezer live? And that's his source. It doesn't make a difference. What's the reason they're going back home? No matter what, they're protected. Because anytime they start walking in Eretz Yisrael, every 4 amos is a mitzvah. Mimele, they're protected. Reb Chaim says, Yafeh. God has come, Baruch Hashem. So Kodesh Baruch Hu says to Avraham, I'm going to give you the entire land. But you know what part of the land? Ki et kol haaretz asher ata roye lecha etnena. Whatever you see, I will give you. It sounds as if it's dependent on Avraham Avinu's eyesight. Whatever you can see is yours. If you don't see it, it's not yours. How big is Eretz Yisrael? Can you see the entire land? How big is Eretz Yisrael? Menachos daf Samech Daled Amud Beis. Before that, Megillah daf Gimel Amud Daled. The Gemara says 400 parsa by 400 parsa. But Sukkah daf Ches Amud Aleph we learn when you multiply an amma by an amma, you get an amma in 2/5. That's what the Gemara says. If 400 by 400, we have to add 2/5. What's the fifth of 400? 80? 2/5? 160. So 400 plus 160. So the size of Eretz Yisrael is 560 parsa. Where should you stand if you want to be able to see 560? What's the best way?
Mountain.
Stand in the middle. If you're right in the middle, look to the right, look to the left, you'll be able to cover everything. Good. How far can one see? Masechet Bechoros, Daf Nun Daled Amud Beis, we learn that a shepherd can see to a distance of 16 mil. That's 4 parsa. 4 parsa only. But in Masechet Soifrim, Perek Chaf Aleph, we learn that Avraham Avinu was a giant. Chazal darshan a pasuk from Yeshaya. Ha'adam ha'gadol ba'anakim ze Avraham Avinu. The giants of all giants, that his size was corresponding to 74 people. But in Yalkut Reuveni, the Gir says corresponding to 70 people. So if a regular person can see to the distance of 4 parsa, if you're 70 times greater than normal people, 70 times 4, you can probably see to the distance of 70 times 4 is 280. Perfect! Stand right in the center of Eretz Yisrael, which is the 280 parsa, and you'll be able to look to the right, to the left. Whatever you see, Lecha etnena, I will give to you. Yostov Tzerebe. Who else can say such a thing? Gevaldik. Vayichalek aleim laila. Avraham Avinu is going to war. Hu va'avadav. He and his slaves, his army, vayekem vayirdefem ad choiva. Where is this place called Choiva? Asher mismol le Damasek. It's to the left of Damasek. Very strange language here. The Torah never uses right and left to tell us directions. We normally use north and south, east and west. Suddenly here the Torah switches and uses the word left to tell me, by the way, it's to the left. So say whatever you want to say. Direction. How come you're using right or left? Where do we find Yeminu small?
Where do we find it being small? To tell me things which object each other, the opposite. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left. That's the opposites. Or, I want to include everything. Lo tasur mehem yaminu small. Don't deviate to the right or to the left. That means don't deviate, period. Not to right or to the left. Or, ve'amayim lahem choima miminam umismoilam. Doesn't mean to the right, to the left. It means they were surrounded by water. But suddenly here the Torah decides to use, and nowhere else do we find this, the right and the left as indicators of directions. Left represents north. That's what the Targum says in Tehillim. The Pasuk says, Safon v'yamin ata bra'asam, left and right you created. And the Targum over there says, Hello, im letzfona ana ledroma, ve'imat ledroma ana letzifona. So the Targum, the Onkelos here in our passage says, right and left actually denotes north and east. But again, why suddenly here to switch as opposed to everywhere else? I'm sorry? North and south. I'm sorry, north and south. Why suddenly here we use left and right as opposed to everywhere else, which is only an indicator for something else? I have a dear friend, Rabbi Yaakov Stern Shlita, and he said the following, which I think is $1 million, at least. Who actually went to war with Avraham Avinu? How many soldiers? One. His name? Gematria?
314.
So when the Torah says 318 soldiers, it actually means one. Mr. Eliezer, who actually has the Gematria, the numerical value of 318. Great. So when the Torah says, Asher mismol ledamesek, to the left of Damasek, we have to look at the left side of the word Damasek. What does that mean? We find the word Damasek twice in the Torah. Once here, Asher mismol ledamesek. And then right after it says, Vayashev Avraham Esar Echush, and Avraham Avinu went and he was able to be victorious and he took back stuff with him, Vayashev Avraham. And the second time it says, Uven Meshek Beiti, my household member is Damasek Eliezer. So when it says Asher Mismola Damasek, look to the left of the word Damasek. Damasek, go to the left. Eliezer is found on the left side. In other words, it's alluding to what the Gemara says. It's not really 318. It's the person representing 318 people, and his name was Eliezer. And in the first time here, when it says the word Vayashev, Vayashev has the same numerical value as well as 318. So after the word Damasek, in other words, and to the left of the word Damasek, again you have 318, telling you that really Avraham Avinu only took Eliezer, who represents 318 soldiers, and that's why the Torah Dafka here uses the word small, left, to tell you, if you're going to take it to the north, it wouldn't help, you wouldn't understand what they're saying. Here you have a remes to what Chazal say, and the Torah is so precise. There's a few other special words in this Torah, in this Pasha. The word ulai appears here for the first time in the entire Tanakh. The word ulai has a numerical value of 47, and it's a pellet. I found that the word ulai appears 47 times in Tanakh. The word shalom appears here for the very first time. After 375 psukim, in other words, the 376 pasuk has the word shalom. Gematria of shalom, 376. And it doesn't stop with that. Shalom has the gematria of 376, and in Kala Rabasi is one of the Masechtot Ktanos in Shas, it says, Tana, Shalom nitan b'shin ayin vav oisiyos. Shalom has 376 gematria. V'shin ayin vav be'osiyosav. Shin ayin vav is the language of shav'ah, tefillah, davening. So the word shalom has built in the word tefillah. Melamed, this comes to teach us. Shekol haroidev shalom, anyone who pursues peace, and tfilasoi choizeres reikam. His prayer will be answered. Pursue peace, and that is a key to accept your prayers. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Vayomer Elokim, Aval Sarah ishtecha yoledet ben. You're going to have a son. From whom? Sarah ishtecha. And don't we know Sarah is his wife? Again, Malachim come. Vayomer elav, Ayeh Sarah ishtecha, next week's parsha. And we don't know Sarah is his wife. It's a superfluous word. Maybe you should say Sarah, or just say Ishtecha. Why do you have to say Sarah Ishtecha every time you mention her? I asked this to Maran Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Zatzal. And he answered me 4 words. Kedei lechabeva al baila. To cause an endearment and an affection between the two.
Rashi said that.
Good. It's a pele, think about it. No, Rashi says it about why did they ask him bichlal. I'm asking on the word Sarah Ishtecha. Why do you need those two words? Kedei Lecha beva'al baila. How many years are they married? There's a machlokes when Avraham Avinu got married. Seder HaDorah says either when he was 50 or when he was 25. Let's go with 25. So they're married 65 years here? It's quite a while. 75 years, 74. And yet, HaKadosh Baruch Hu still thinks there's an inyan here to enhance the shalom bayis between this unbelievable couple, the greatest tzaddikim. If that's the case, what are we going to say? You see from here a chiyuv to do anything you can to be mechabev yourself on your wife, for your wife to be mechabev herself on you. You see from here, there's no extra words in the Torah. It's an instruction for us. And if you can do the same with other couples, to be mechabev one on the other, it's a tremendous thing. And you see with that, you're also fulfilling the mitzvah of ve'alachta bidrachav, mahu afata, just like he tried to enhance shalom bayis between couples, we should try to do the same. Bris Milah, riddle. 5-point riddle. You came just in time. 5 points riddle. What animal performed Bris Milah? What's that? Animal. Yishmael. But the Torah calls him a pere Adam, not a pere Baal Chai. He is a person. First he's a pere. First he's a wild being. And then he's also an Adam. He's an Adam. He's not called an animal. What animal performed Bris Milah? Strange things. A monkey. Are you familiar with this monkey? Can you show me this monkey?
We mentioned it last week.
We mentioned last week monkeys and elephants for some reason.
Do you think that generation had anything to do with the Bris Milah? And that was when they're humans, if anything. But we're asking what animal, while it's an animal, performed a Bris Milah? It's not stam that I give 5 points. Otherwise I would give just 2 points. Tanchuma. Medrash Tanchuma and Parashas Lech Lecha. Siman Yud Zayin. Avraham Avinu was commanded to do Bris Milah. And he had no clue how and where this is done. Maybe you have to cut off a certain nail. What is Bris Milah? He didn't know what to do. Suddenly, a scorpion came and bit him. And he looked down, oops, I am circumcised. That's why the pasuk says, Be'etzem hayom hazeh nimoil Avraham. It should say, Mal, he circumcised himself. It doesn't say that. Nimol, that means it was done to him. So the scorpion is the first animal, the only animal that we know, to perform Bris Milah on Avraham Avinu. With that you can understand why Avraham Avinu circumcised, according to many opinions, on Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur? Only Milah Bizmana, the 8th day, will override Shabbos on Yom Kippur. Not a Milah She'enu Bizmana. It's not really Bizmana. How old is he? A little older than 8 days old. How old is he now? It's not really Doiche Shabbos or Yom Kippur. But he didn't do it. The scorpion did it. Maybe there's no problem. The scorpion was the first animal, the only animal, performing a Bris Milah.
Didn't he say he went to get advice?
What's that?
Didn't it say he went to get advice?
Yeah, normally you should.
No, but it says that in the Midrash he went to get advice from other people about the Bris Milah.
Many explain he wanted to ask them, what brachas should I say? Asher kitshanu b'mitzvot v'tzivanu al hamilah, or asher kitshanu b'mitzvot lamul. What's the formulation? Avraham Avinu needs advice from other people if to perform a Kodesh Baruch Hu's instruction or not? Many ask this question, and therefore they come up with different ideas. He asked, should I do it in Times Square? Yisumenisa. Or should I do it, in my own basement that nobody should see? He asked him all kinds of questions. Didn't ask him, should I listen to HaKadosh Baruch Hu or not? Avraham Avinu doesn't need advice about that.
How do we get from scorpion to monkey?
We don't? No connection?
So why do we? I thought.
No connection. That's last week's Parsha. Achidish, Gemara in Sanhedrin Kuf Tes, and in the Medrash. No connection to
He
this.
wasn't afraid he was going to die. Now the scorpion poisoned something on him.
No. He looked and said, that's what you meant. Shkoyach. I didn't know how to do it. You sent me a shaliach. Harbe shluchim lamakom, that's Rashi's language. One of them is apparently a scorpion. Another riddle. Bris Milah riddle. How can it be? A kid is born. We're going to circumcise him next Sunday. A week and a half from now. 10 minutes later, another kid is born. The same hospital. And he will have his circumcision 1 day earlier, next Shabbos. 10 minutes later, another kid is born. And we will circumcise him 2 days early, on Friday, next Friday. Can it be in the same place, they're all healthy, 3 kids are born. 10 minutes apart. The first one will circumcise Sunday. The second one, he is younger, he's born 10 minutes later, will be circumcised on Shabbos, one day early. And the one which is the youngest, 20 minutes younger than the first one, he will be circumcised 2 days early. Can it be? Only 3 points for this one.
Other Aleph and other base.
What about other Aleph and other base? And how does it work with 3 people? That goes for the bar mitzvah. It works very well. But how's it going to help us with this? In the month of Tammuz, Marcheshvan, today. Can it be? Yes, it can be. The first kid is born 10 minutes after Shkia. Today. When should we circumcise him? It's a suffix. We don't know if he's a Friday boy or he's a Shabbos one. So next week Friday we can't mal him because maybe it's only the 7th day, it's not the 8th. You can't do it on Shabbos because maybe he's a Friday boy, it's a Mila Sheina Bismana. So when do we circumcise him? When do we circumcise him? Sunday. 10 minutes later, this kid is born after Tzeisa Koichavim, tonight, he's a Shabbos boy. So of course we'll circumcise him next Shabbos. The third kid is born 10 minutes later to a family that holds Rabbeinu Tam, for all intents and purposes. For them, his mom is still a Friday. For us, it's Shabbos. For them, it's Friday. He will be circumcised next week on Friday. A 24-year-old comes.
In Shabbos later.
Yeah, Rabbeinu Tam for all intents and purposes, not in the Chumrah. For Kula and Chumrah. If it's for the Chumrah, we're not going to do that. But if it's Lekula and Lechumrah for all intents and purposes, yes. There are people who do that.
Maybe this is a problem in this case. It's causing the time risk to be.
If they hold Rabbeinu Tam only Lechumrah, in other words, they just want to be machmir to make sure, but lekula they don't do it, we can't do that. Because maybe lemaisa you're circumcising a kid on Shabbos when it's not his 8th day. But if they hold Rabbeinu Tam for everything, so then they have to go with Rabbeinu Tam's Shita for all intents and purposes. A 24-year-old guy comes and tells us the following. Many years ago when I was born, I had a bris milah, but they didn't do a suda for me. Is there an inyan? Should I have a suda now that I realized that there was never a suda when I was bris milah, or not sure, 24 years later, what's the connection now? Do you do a suda bris milah kind of late, 24 years later? What do you say, Rabbi say? You say yes.
Because
You have a source?
No, when you have a baby girl, there's many cases where they didn't do a suda and it caused lots of sorrows in the families, and more so for just as much for a boy.
Okay.
So Mazel Tov should be said to the family and for the girl also.
And for the girl?
For the girl too. So the Mazel. That was just that. That was not at that time. They missed that. They missed the Mazel Tovs. And now she needs that Mazel Tov.
And without it, she won't be able to get married.
No, she can't get married.
She won't be getting married.
But,
Where does it say thou shall give a mazel tov to a baby girl? And how many mazel tov does she need? And if only 25 people came instead of 70 that you invited, so no good? You need to do it again?
no, but there's multitude of people who come and wish you good, wish you
Source? Source? I like your svara. Source? Is there a source? Nechazei anan. Let's see. There's a Gemara in Megillah Daf Tet Zayin Amud Beis. Equality. So you want to cut off something of hers as well? The Gemara in Megillah Daf Tet Zayin Amud Beis darshan the pasuk. La Yehudim Haisa. Oira vesimcha vesason vikar. What is sason? Bris milah. Sason refers to bris milah. So what do we see from here? At the end of Megillah Esther, when Baruch Hashem, we won. Now, la Yehudim Haisa Oira vesimcha vesason. Now, finally, there's a bris milah. Asks the Chassam Sofer. What are you talking about? We don't find that one of the decrees of Haman was you're not allowed to have a bris milah. No such thing. So they did have a bris milah. So why now they're rejoicing with a bris milah? Says the Chassam Sofer, they had a bris milah all along, but they didn't have the seudah. Now that Haman is gone, they can have a seudas bris milah. You see a source that you can have a seudah even though it's not after long time after the bris itself. You can have a seudas bris milah. Another source. Our Pasha. Avraham Avinu does a great festive meal for Yitzhak biyom. He gamel Es Yitzchak. Chazal say 2 years later. When he stopped nursing, that means 2 years later, in the time of Chazal, they always used to nurse for 2 years. Then he did a big festive meal. 2 years later, the bris was 2 years ago. You see from here, you can do a seuda 2 years later. Good rayos?
Doesn't mean he was bar mitzvah?
No. When he stopped nursing, he's 2 years old, he's not a mitzvah yet. Then he did a seuda for the bris milah. Good rayos? Good rayos? For bris milah. Rebbe Yosef thought these are not good rayos. Why?
If you have a bris on Tisha B'Av, then the suddas for the family is straight away. Maybe you should be doing it after Tisha B'Av.
That's not a problem to be doiche one day. We're talking about you're coming when you're 24 years old. You're coming when you're 2 years old.
No, but what's the halacha there? They actually have the suddah there and there.
Motzei Tisha B'Av.
Motzei.
Motzei Tisha B'Av. Oh, I'm willing to wait 7 hours. And you know what? Do it 5 minutes before Shkia. You're only waiting an hour and a half. No big deal. Rabbi Yoshi said these are not good rayos. For our question, for our guy, 24-year-old guy, why? At the time of Haman, why didn't they do the Suda? They were afraid. Tremendous fear. Here, not Shaykh. The time of Avram, why didn't he do the Suda immediately after the bris? Because he said, if I'm going to do a Suda, you know what people are going to say? This guy is crazy. And not only is he crazy, he is so cruel. He is cutting off something off an 8-day-old baby. Kid may die. And he's sitting and having a nice big festive meal. This guy is crazy. Said Avram Avinu, you know what, let me wait. I'll wait 2 years. And they'll see it's like it's just getting stronger and bigger and everything's okay. And there'll be a tremendous Kiddush Hashem. They'll understand then it's a mitzvah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So he had a reason. You had no reason not to do the Seuda. Mimele, these 2 rayas don't apply. And what you will do is something very, very strange to people who are going to look around and say, what are you doing? 24 years later you're doing a Seuda. And therefore it's not Shaykh. But you say he's going to be missing on all the mazel tovs and all the brachos. So there's a misconception or something, a saying that people say in the name of the stipler. I took somebody once from LA to Reb Chaim Kanievsky and told him the following about tshuva. And he said, when my daughter was born, so we didn't do a kiddush. And now she's 18. And I understand from your father, the stipler, there's a big Indian to do a kiddush to get all the brachos that Yimetz Hashem she shall find a good zivug and everything else. We denied that from her back then. Should we do it now? I understand it's from your father, the stipler. Reb Chaim said, my father never said such a thing. Lo haya velo nivra. Never said such a thing. And then he said, but I'll give you a bracha that you'll be able to do a kiddush Yimetz Hashem soon to your grandchildren coming from this daughter. Think about it. People do a kiddush at the age of 18 or 20 or 24 or 26 to a girl that didn't have a kiddush. Think about it. At that time, in fact when she's 12 already, you should teach her the main thing, the most important thing for a woman is tznius, to be inward. Kol kvuda bas melech prima, not a chutza. And now you're putting her in the spotlight and everybody should be talking about her, looking at her. That makes no sense. So maybe she'll get a lot of brachos, but your gain is offset by your loss. You're teaching her lack of tznius. You're potentially causing a stumbling block to many other people. Makes no sense. So when she is born, avada do it. Why not? Get the brachos, stop, celebrate, and thank Yibon Shalaylam. But afterwards, when she's older, makes no sense. And the stipler never said that. It doesn't exist. That's why I asked you for a source. The first person to ever cast Ayin Hara. We spoke about Ayin Hara, I think in Parshas Balak, many different inyanim. But who's the first person to ever cast an Ayin Hara on someone else? And it actually worked. Sarah Imenu. What'd you do? On Hagar, Rashi says that when the pasuk says, the Malach said to her, you're going to be pregnant. Rashi says, but she was already pregnant. You told me that before. Melamed is come to teach you that Sarah gave an Ayin Hara to Hagar and she lost the baby. So the Malach comes and says, don't worry, you're going to be pregnant again. You got that one right. But now let me ask you the second question. Who is the second person to cast an Ayin Hara on a person? And it worked. The first one, Sarah. Great. Who is the second person in the world to cast an Ayin Hara that we're familiar with? And it worked. On whom did he cast an Ayin Hara? The surprising answer is next week, Parsha, Sarah Imenu. This time on Ishmael. The pasuk says, "Ve'esa yered." Rashi brings, "Echnisa bo Sarah Ayin Hara." Sarah cast an Ayin Hara on Ishmael, and therefore he was so weak, he had such high fever, and he wasn't able to walk. Sarah Imenu twice, once on Hagar, second time on her son, Yishmael. Yaakov Avinu also warns his sons when they go down to Mitzrayim, listen, you're all big, tall, handsome, don't go in the same gate. This may cause ayin hara. Each one should go from a different place. Ayin hara has tremendous, tremendous power. Again, we spoke many, many different inyanim in Parshas Balak. Maybe we will in the future a little more. HaKadosh Baruch Hu waits 99 years until he commands Avraham Avinu, I'd like you to circumcise yourself. Why so long?
He wanted to wait till he was actually commanded to do it.
That's a question, if I would ask, why did Avraham Avinu wait until HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded him to do? Since Avraham Avinu was Mekayim the entire Torah. In Yom HaKaf Ches Amud Beis in Kiddushin Pei Beis Amud Aleph, the Gemara says, Avraham Avinu fulfilled the entire Torah before it was given. So the famous question is, so why did Avraham Avinu wait until HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded him? You sit in the sukkah every year, you keep Shabbos every week, and you put on tefillin every single day. So why do you wait? So the Gaon Mivina says, and actually is even before that, I think Moshe Zkenim ala Torah is the first one to say it, Bali HaToisvis, that he wanted to be in the realm of one who's commanded to do something and does it, which is higher level than one who is not commanded, because this is a one-time shot. You can't do it next week again. You do it once, so you wanted to get more sachar. You wanted to do it as a person who's obligated, but didn't ask that. My question is, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu wait 99 years to command him? Why not earlier? HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw that Avraham Avinu was his loyal servant much before that. Either at the age of 3, he recognized HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or at the age of 48. Machlokes in the Midrashim, the Rambam says at the age of 40. Let's go with the age of 3. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu waited 96 years to command him, why don't you do a bris milah? Why so late?
Is there any connection with the fact that Ishmael was born, Ishmael needed to have bris milah at 13 years old, so that's why he put it down 99 for Abraham.
Why does it have to be 13 years later? And why does Ishmael have to be born so long later? So let him be born 13 years after Avraham Avinu's bris.
So Ishmael claims against Yitzchak.
Why does it have to be 13? Says the Medrash Tanchuma. Why 99? To teach all future converts. If a convert will come, the age is 86, and he will say, I'd like to, I have to convert, I have to also do bris milah. Sorry, I don't do that. Even your Avraham Avinu was only 72 when he got this bris milah. I think it's too dangerous. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, what, Avraham, we're going to wait 99 years. No one will ever be able to say, for me, it's, I passed that age. We don't do bris milah on a person who's 92 years old. Why not? Avraham Avinu was 99 when he did his bris, and he is fine. So this closes the door on all future excuses for all people to come. Whether it's a Baal Tshuva that never have bris milah, whether it's a convert, whatever it is. If Avraham Avinu can have a 99, I guess this Medrash assumes nobody's going to come at the age of 100 or 101. I don't know. But 99, I guess it's like, closure on 100 years of life. And they made it, that's the reason. That's the reason that the Medrash Tanchuma brings. Moshe Zkenim on the Torah brings a different reason. 99 is what letters in Hebrew? Tzadi, Tet. Tzadi is spelled Tzadik, Tzadi, Daled, and Kuf. And Tet is spelled Tet, Yud, Tav, and that is a Gematria. Taryag, 613. So Kodesh Baruch Hu wanted him to be at the age which represents 613. That is 99, and that's why he waited 99 years. A little Yana de Yoima. Is there an Indian to kill innocent people in Gaza? Women, babies. Many of them were killed, apparently will be killed in the war. Is there an Indian? How do we look at this?
You can tell him to become like their parents. And,
So now you're a Navi. You're a Navi. You're talking about a baby, a 2-day-old, a 5-day-old. Are they Amalek? Did you see their Tudat Zehut? So you're a Navi as well. 2 Nevi'im. Shtem is Nevi'im is Navi b'signon echad. Gewaldik. Any other to perform a base deal of Nevi'im? Gewaldik. What numbers are going to win the lottery tomorrow? Do you know? Chas v'shalom to think that there is a capital punishment imposed by us on babies, on mothers, on innocent people, innocent civilians. Chas v'shalom. But in war, people will die. And you see throughout the Tanakh that when you go to war, you're trying to win a war. And I don't want to say we don't care, But we have to ignore for the time being the mercy that we do have in us, built in us. Who is a Jid? Rachmanim, Baishanim, Goim Lecha Sadim. That's what the Gemara says. That's the acronym of Gever. Gimel is Goim Chasadim. Beis is Baishanim. Reish is Rachmanim. That is the essence of a Jew. But at the time of a war, that's just the nature of the beast. That's how wars are played out. And therefore, even though Chazal say in Pirkei Avos, Chaviv Adam, Shenivra B'Tzelem, every person throughout the world is created in the image of God. And therefore, Chaviv, a person is dear. We have extra. Chaviv Yisrael, Shenikru Banim Lamakom. We have another notch, another level on top of that, another layer of Chavivus that we have towards the Kodesh Baruch Hu has towards us. But every person in this world is Chaviv. But when...
my nephew who's in Tzava now, and just a couple of days ago, and they were told that when they're not sure, they still have to shoot.
Right. Because that is the way a war is fought. That's just the way it works. But when we hear of innocent civilians, and we know for a fact he's innocent when he's 1 month old, we should not be happy. We should be elated when a terrorist dies, because that saves many Jewish lives, each one of them that goes. But when innocent lives are taken, we are not happy. Chas v'shalom. But that's just the nature of a war. And in fact, I'm not an expert, but I understand that part of the delay in starting, to go inside there is not only to save our hostages, it's also to eliminate hurting civilians, and we allow them to go out. The fact that Hamas is not letting them, that's their issue, but we are trying to do the best. Along with it, we have to make sure not to hurt the civilians, but not to say, so we can't fight. Chas v'shalom, because Chazal have a language in Mitzoira, Siman Aleph in the Tanchuma. Kol shenasa rachman al ha'achzari, if you become too merciful on a person who is cruel, ultimately you will become cruel on those who are merciful on Klal Yisrael. Rabbeinu Yoina.
Is that wrong? Wait for them to leave.
It's the right thing to do if it doesn't hurt your efforts. And according to our understanding, it doesn't hurt our efforts. We know that we need to do, and it also gives us time to get ready to do what we need to do and to train a lot of people who just came in from reserve. It works on our, to our best interest.
He told me also, with regard to that, because we were wondering why aren't they going in quicker? So he said they expected it. Hamas expected them to
Right,
go in.
right, sure.
This way then
Sure,
confuses them and they
sure. Rabbeinu Yoina and the Mishnah in Avos says, even when the enemy is wicked, you should not be happy in his downfall. So what should you be happy about? We definitely should be happy when an enemy falls, because the enemy of Hashem was defeated. We're not fighting with the enemy because he is wicked, because he is the enemy of Hashem. But the pasuk does say in Mishlei, Binfol oivecha al tismach, when your enemy falls, don't be happy. And this is a question many people ask. I was asked this, I don't know how many times in the last 2 weeks. It clearly says, Binfol oivecha al tismach. Do not rejoice when your enemy falls. So in Maseches Megillah Daf Tet Zayin, the Gemara says, Haman was instructed to take Mordechai and to put him on the horse. So when he did that, Mordechai says to him, I'm so sorry, I can't get on my horse by myself. I'm fasting for 3 days now. I just don't have koyach. You have any eitzah? So Haman says, well, okay. And he bent down, and Mordechai had to step on him. When he was about to step on him, Mordechai gave him a nice kick. And Haman looked at him and says, excuse me, you forgot a pasuk in Mishlei, Bilfol oivecha al tismach. What are you rejoicing when your enemy falls? You're not allowed to. And Mordechai says, you read only part of Mishlei, you forgot another pasuk. Uve'avoid reshaim rina. And when reshaim fall, it's tremendous happiness. You forgot another pasuk, Haman. Ve'ata al bamoseimot tidroch. You should step all over them. Binfol oivecha al tismach. When your enemy falls, that refers to an enemy, soil enemy. When your competition in business is not successful, don't rejoice. He is a yid just like you. When you start, the Gemara says, the Medrash says, when you have an argument in Beis HaMedrash about a certain svara with your friend, Talmid Chochem, and you showed him, you were right, don't rejoice. Just be happy that you found the emes, potentially.
He's cooler than Oyed.
Yes, the Gemara in Kiddushin. Two Talmidei Chachamim that argue in halacha, they look as if they're enemies, and they don't move from there until they become oihavim. From oivim they turn into oihavim. But ve'atal b'moseimot tidroch, you should step all over them. That refers to you, Haman, to all the Rishaim. So we don't have any problem with this pasuk. Tanat Veliyahu actually says in this pasuk, bin fol oivecha al tismach. But it says uve'avod Rishaim brina. You should rejoice when the Rishaim are extinguished. How can these psukim coexist? Tanat Veliyahu, it's Torah we learned from Eliyahu Novi. This refers to a Talmid Chacham that beat you today in halacha, and tomorrow comes something else and you beat him. Al tismach, al tismach. But if you see a goy, your enemy, and he tries to kill you, and you killed him, of course you should rejoice. But with what? Rabbeinu Yonah says, with the fact that the enemy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is lost. There's a tremendous chiddush in the Ya'amik Davar. Mamish, I couldn't believe it. It appears twice. Last week's Parsha, Bereishis Perek Tes Pasukei, and the Pasuk of Ve'ach esdimchem lenafshoisechem edrosh miyad kol chaya edreshenu, umiyad ha'adam ish, miyad ish achiv edrosh es nefesh ha'adam, if one kills someone else, I will, says the Kodesh Baruch Hu, no good. The same thing he says in Dvorim Kaf Pasuk Ches. The Emek Davar wants to say, when did this apply the issue of don't murder in times of peace? That's why the pasuk here says miyad ish achiv, when there's achva, when there's love between the two, when there's time of peace, and you go and you kill someone. But at the time of war, the issue of lo sirtzach doesn't apply. Tremendous chiddush.
The threat of war hasn't been Milchmas Mitzvah, but that only can be a war that's caused by the Sanhedrin.
Lichoyre Milchemes Mitzvah. Lichoyre Milchemes Mitzvah. There was a Rav that was Mekarev, a certain individual, and Baruch Hashem, he was successful. This person became frum, very good. And he told me, you know what? When you get married, I'll be your Mesada Kiddushin. Great. A few years passed. And now this person is about to get married. So the family calls the Rav and says, you promise you're going to be the Mesada Kiddushin. Please come. He says, where's the wedding? He says, 2 kilometers from the border. Right next to Gaza. We're expecting you on Tuesday, 8 p.m. He says, whoa. When I said I'm going to come to be the Mesada Kiddushin, I never meant the time of war. You kidding me? I'm not going there. It's dangerous. I'm afraid. But when you say you're going to do this as a neder for Dvar Mitzvah, you have a problem. It's a neder. Can he annul it? What can he do? How can he get out of it? Should he get out of it? He's afraid. Although, last week I think, or 2 weeks ago, we said, Sefer HaChinuch, Mitzvah Tav Kuf Chaf Hei says, you are not allowed to be afraid when you're going to war. Pasuk in Shoftim says, Lo ta'arotz mipeneihem. Don't be afraid. Pasuk in Ekev says, Lo tira. Don't be afraid.
He's not going to war.
He's not going to war.
No, he's not going to war.
He's going to camp.
He's going with Mesada Kiddushin. He's not going to war.
It's the time of war.
No, he's not going to fight.
So he shouldn't be afraid. Maybe all these psukim were meant only for soldiers, not for Rabbonim. This Rav is afraid. Should he go down there to Gaza or not? Shliach mitzvah men anizokim, but you forgot the next sentence in the Gemara. In Psochim Daf Ches Amud Aleph we learn, Shliach mitzvah eino nizok, he will not be harmed, but he can say, he can't go to the middle of the highway and say nothing's going to happen to me. I'm walking in the middle of the highway. I can't be harmed because I'm a shliach mitzvah. Guess what? The next truck is running over him. B'makom shchiach hezeka, in a place where it's dangerous, you can't use I'm a shliach mitzvah. You have to be careful. We normally say shliach mitzvah will not be harmed, but in a place where it's dangerous, you can't say that. So if it's dangerous down there, how can you say I'm a shliach mitzvah? You can't use that.
So that would also mean if you apply that, going to the hotel today could be considered as dangerous.
Who says dangerous? In the last few weeks, did you hear anything going on there? 1 million soldiers and police officers. I don't necessarily think it's considered a makom sakan. But what about this person? This Rav, should he go down there or not?
When he made this neder,
I know, that's the problem.
he didn't have mind. He didn't have mind. It would apply in a situation like this, so we can find a petach for his neder. I mean,
So a very similar shaila was asked to Shevet HaLevi, Rav Wozner, by Rav Moshe Halberstam. I think it's in Chelek Yud Aleph. And he asks him, there was a guy, a young Bachu, who was hospitalized in the hospital. He was not with us anymore. He was, I don't know exactly what his condition was, but he wasn't with us. So the family asked me to come, and I came, and he was unconscious. And I gave him a bracha, and I said to the family, don't worry, he will wake up, everything will be okay, and I'm going to be the Mesada Kiddushin. And in fact, a few hours later, a guy woke up. And Baruch Hashem, he was healed and he was fine. And now, Reb Moshe Halberstam is asking Rav Wozner, now this kid is getting married. The family just called me now, 2 years later, and he's getting married. I said, great, I'll be the Mesada Kiddushin. Where's the wedding? They said, in New York. I said, New York? Oh, I'm not going to New York. I don't have koyach to go all the way to New York. To fly all the way to the States, I don't have koyach for that. Do I have to go? Same shada. Same shada. So Rav Wozner says to him, it's clear that adata dehachi lo nadat. It's clear that when you made this neder, you didn't have that in mind. It's an umdana demuchach. It's so clear and evident that when you said you're going to come, you're going to be in the Mesada Kiddushin, you didn't mean flying all the way to New York. And what would it be if it to be, I don't know, somewhere in an island that it's got to take you 3 days to get there? It's clear that you didn't have that in mind. And the sakanas drachim in the way itself. And bichlal to go to Chutz La'aretz, there's a question you have to ask. And you teach Torah to the rabbim, and it's a tremendous bittul Torah. It's not like you're going from here to the next city and you come back. The recuperation from, to recuperate from the flight, and the flight itself, it's a bittul Torah rabbim. For sure, you don't have to go. And if you're still choishes, so just do a taras nedarim. And that's what we're going to say to the Rav here. You don't have to go. It's clear that when you said, I'm going to Mesada Kiddushin, you didn't mean in Aza at the time of war. And if you're still choishes, we'll do a taras nedarim. Since we're talking about Siddur Kiddushin, an amazing maaseh with Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, who once went to be Mesada Kiddushin, and he goes to the father and says, who's going to be the Eidim? So he points to these two guys. He says, oh, one of the guys was a Knesset member. Very, 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 very secular Knesset member. Very, very, very secular. Very secular. Amechal Shabbos Befaresa and a few other things. Shulchan Aruch Rosh Mishpatzim Melamed Daled, especially Seif Yud Zayin, we learn who can be a kosher witness and who is disqualified. He fits all the description of the disqualified ones. What do you do? If Shlomo Zalman Auerbach doesn't want to embarrass anyone and to cause a tremendous machlokes in the middle of the wedding, look how clever. Gedolei Yisrael. If Shlomo Zalman goes to this Knesset member and says, Shalom Aleichem, I understand you're supposed to be an Ed here, right? He says, yeah. He says, maybe you can do me a favor. Sure. Look, I am invited to be a Mesada Kiddushin almost every night. No one ever invites me to be an Ed. I would like to replace you. I would like to be the Ed. They never give me the Ed. Siddur Kiddushin, I know how to do it. But I never was an Ed. Would you mind switching me? You were the Mesada Kiddushin. And looks at him, I don't know how to do it. Says, don't worry about it. I'll do it. I'll tell you what to do. It's very easy. I'll be there right next to you. I'll stand the whole time. But I want to be the Ed. Would you mind? He says, yeah. Siddur Kiddushin is a big honor. So sure, I'll do it. Givaldik. Such an insight, such a brilliancy. The only problem with this, Pischei Tshuva, in Shulchan Aruch Even Ezer, Siman Memtes, and he said, there's a takana from the Rabbanim of France in the time of Rabbeinu Tam, not to give anyone who's not an expert in Siddur Kiddushin to be a Mesada Kiddushin. I don't think it's a problem. If Shlomo Zalman Auerbach is the Mesada Kiddushin here, he's officiating the whole thing. What's the reason for that takana? To make sure there's no big mistakes that Chas v'Sholom can cause an Eshes Is. Big problem. It's not going to cause. It's not going to happen here. You have a Shlomo Zalman Auerbach that checks everything, and in fact, all he's really doing is honoring this guy to say the first two brachos. That's his role here as a Mesada Kiddushin. Mimele Shlomo Zalman is the Mesada Kiddushin. He's also the Ed, and this is the sensitivity and the brilliancy of Gedolei Yisrael not to cause any embarrassment and yet to keep the Digdukei halacha.
Why Simcha be surprised that I want you to be the Mesada Kiddushin? How can you go give it away? I want you to.
Are you going to argue with Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach? The Chazon Ish comes to your wedding and says, maybe we should do it this way. So, oh, wow. You'll have a story to tell your grandchildren. You know, the Chazon Ish changed something in a wedding. You'll be so proud. If there is a siren that goes off in the middle of one's learning, should he stop his learning or not? Last 2 weeks I heard all kinds of ideas about this, and for some reason, from some people who told me, if anywhere else throughout the day when I'm doing things, I run to the mamad, to the safe place or the shelter, but not when I'm learning. When you're learning, you don't have to.
I was in the middle of the Amidah.
In the Amidah, you must stop. You go to the mamad and you continue davening there. You try not to talk bichlal, and you go to the next place where you're safe and you continue davening over there. You don't wait. You start, continue davening. Pikuach nefesh overrides everything, including a mitzvah derabanan called tefillah. Pikuach nefesh, which is a mitzvah deoraisa. But what about when you're learning? Is there a tzad to say that when you're learning, you should continue learning?
There is. If you don't stop for anything else, yes.
Uh-huh.
You stop for other interruptions, no.
What about pikuach nefesh? Other interruptions of the same level of pikuach nefesh? How did you elevate? I don't stop for answering my call, answering somebody who calls me. How do you compare that to pikuach nefesh, Shaila? What's that? Torah agune magna ve'atzulei matzla soita chaf aleph. Does that mean you should not stop when you're learning?
If you're allowed to interrupt the question to answer Melech,
Tell me, b'dikas chametz tonight. What b'dikas chametz is? What is it? Is the Rabbanon or the Raisa? B'dikas chametz, the Rabbanon. Kriyas Megillah, Purim tonight. The Rabbanon or the Raisa? Do you stop your learning in order to do b'dikas chametz and Megillah? But for pikuach nefesh, no. Interesting. However, there is a base up to what you're saying. Who is that? The Kovetz Shiurim. Who's the Kovetz Shiurim? Marcheshvan Wasserman, Hashem Yikom Damo. And he writes, in Gemore Ksubis Ayin Zayin Amud Beis, we learn Rabbi Shua ben Levi would go visit people who are very, very sick with something very contagious, a disease called Ra'asan, that's Reish Aleph Taf Nun, and nobody else would want to get close to them. The Gemara says Reb Ami and Reb Asi wouldn't even eat eggs that came from the same neighborhood when they're in their peel. They wouldn't touch it. Oh, who knows? I'm going to get this. Worse than Corona. Worse than Corona. Rabbi Shua ben Levi would sit with them and would learn with them. Asks the Kovetz Shiurim, excuse me, what are you doing? Who gave you permission? We learned what we said before, in Makom Hezeka, when it's dangerous place, you don't say, Amo Shliach Mitzvah. You have to be careful, you have to watch yourself. Says Elchanan Wasserman, Zehu Bishar Mitzvos. That's true to all other mitzvahs. But learning Torah is different, and one will not be harmed even b'makom hezeka. Do we pass in like this, Elchanan Wasserman? Absolutely not. Reb Shlomo Zalman says, you know why? Because our hearts are not as pure as Rabbi Shua ben Levi. And do you know how you're learning? Do you know that your learning qualifies to say, well, I'm learning Torah, I'm with the Kodesh Baruch Hu now. Mimele, it comes back to all mitzvahs. All mitzvahs are rejected for pikuach nefesh, except the big three. Learning Torah is not one of the big three. It's a gigantic one. Talmud Torah keneged kulam, but not as far as this is concerned. It's not givul harav shvichus dam avodas zara. And he made it, one must stop his learning and run to the mamad.
how would we apply this principle if Western came up in one of the shoes that I go to? The shoe is just like a caravan. There's no place secure. And a couple of very elderly gentlemen who find it very hard to walk, they're still coming to the shoe. I would imagine that in this situation where there could be an alarm at any time, they'd have the heter to daven on their own at home at the same time as the minyan. By coming to shul, what do? People that are mobile, if the alarm goes off, Simon goes off, you're going to leave these elderly people.
That's a great question. It has to be addressed case per case, depending on the city that this is happening in, and depending on the individual, depending on the mitzius, what we can offer him or not, and depending on the time, because this changes by the day and by the minute. This week they opened up all the schools and said you can go back to regular learning. Just up to Tuesday it wasn't like that. So this changes. So we have to listen to the directives that we get from the authorities with the Rav who's going to be asked this question of that specific person, that specific time, that specific mitzius. Rabbi Elchanan Wasserman, who we just quoted, in his Hagdama to Kovetz Shiurim, writes an unbelievable thing. He writes, if somebody is not mischazek b'Torah in times like this, he is oiver on what the Torah commands. Lo ta'amod al dam re'echa. Because he writes the terrible tragedies that befall us is because forgetting the Torah. So if one doesn't do anything he can to strengthen his Torah, which is the only way to fix, he is oiver lo ta'amod al dam re'echa. Mamish unbelievable. Reb Elchanan Wasserman, and his Akdama to Kovetz Shiurim, and who should know better than Reb Elchanan Wasserman, Hashem Yikom Damo. And therefore, if one who is listening to this still didn't jump on the bandwagon called Daf Yomi, join the Daf Yomi. Whatever Daf Yomi you like, there's so many different options out there. If you're already doing Daf Yomi, so start a Rambam Yomi, a Mishnah Bura Yomi, or whatever Yomi there is. If you're already doing all the Yomis, or you're not interested in the Yomis, so whatever it is that you're learning, learn with more amkus. Spend a little more time. Show HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you want to be mechazek limud Torah, because that's our way out. I just want to end with a few psukim from Tanakh. The Navi Malachi was the last prophet. Malachi is the last prophet. And at his time,
things are really, really bad. Spiritual level of Klal Yisrael. Many Jews were married to non-Jews. The spiritual level was very, very low. And the second pasuk in Malachi, Perek Aleph pasuk Beis, Ahavti eschem Omar Hashem. I love you, says the Kodesh Baruch Hu. Says the Radak. Ve'af al pi she'atem mach'isim oisi, and even though you anger me, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I love you. And I will give you the land that I swore to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. The Malbim, in Sefer Shoftim Perek Hey, pasuk Beis, the pasuk says, this is Shira of Dvoira, and Dvoira says, Before praos beisnadev am baruchu Hashem. What does this mean? Says the Malbim. Before praos, if the nation is parua, if they're level, either in spirituality, in what they do or don't do in mitzvahs, or in the physical ability to fight, is very, very low, very weak. He's parua. He is as if open. There's holes in the fence, both the spiritual one and the physical one. And yet you find misnadvim, you find people who volunteer to fight. He says, this is his language. Ein ze inyan tiv'i rak eloki. This is not natural. This doesn't make sense. This is a divine thing, and therefore, Baruch Hu es Hashem ki miyado haisazois. And therefore, bless HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because it's only from Him. You see what's going on here in the last 3 weeks. How people are volunteering and what they do to fight for Klal Yisrael. Whoever, whatever, those people who can hold on the gun, those people who can hold on the Torah, and those people who can do the tzitzis and everything else that people are volunteering and contributing is just unbelievable. That doesn't make any sense. It's not natural. Where is it from? Inyan Eloiki. And therefore, bless HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Should we be afraid or not? No. Not at all? No fear. Why? Can't hear you. Okay, we'll take action. Can we be afraid while we're taking action? Sefer HaChinuch, we said, Tav Kuf Chafei, that when you're going to war, don't be afraid. Don't think about anything else. Just think, I'm going to win. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's with me. Shlomo Melech said something before Sefer HaChinuch.
How can you not be afraid?
Okay, let's see. It's natural. It's natural. What do you want from me? Who's the proof to what you're saying? Moshe Rabbeinu. Sefer Shemois. Pasha Shemois. HaKadosh Baruch Hu instructs Moshe Rabbeinu, I want you to throw down the staff. He does. Suddenly, it turns into a snake. Vayanos Moshe mipanav. And Moshe runs away. Listen to a language of Ha'amigdavar. V'zeh pele me'adonenu Moshe. It's a wonderment. Our master Moshe, what happened to you? Where are you running to? And from what are you running? You're talking to Ribono Shel Olam. So you think HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not there? Melech ha'aretz kivodo. He's there too. And by the way, you think HaKadosh Baruch Hu can protect you here? You are talking to Ribono Shel Olam. You're leaving because of a snake? And over there you cannot be harmed. And over there you can run away from the snake. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants, He's going to throw the snake right back at you. What did you gain? And what are you doing? Ashayla of the Netziv. Says the Netziv, the Ha'amigdavar, what do you want? It's natural. Moshe, even though he was Ish Elokim, he's also human. He's human. And it's only natural to get scared, startled. I saw a snake 2 seconds ago. This was a snake. Oh! He runs away. This is Moshe Rabbeinu. So what are we going to say? So you're saying, should be afraid. Let's see what Shlomo HaMelech says. Shlomo HaMelech wrote a pasuk, 2 psukim, talking to us today, Tafshin Pei Daled in Marcheshvan. Unbelievable. Koheles, Perek Zayin, pasuk Yud Zayin, and pasuk Yud Ches. I'm reading to you the pasuk, and I want you to tell me what this pasuk is talking about. Seemingly, no connection. Says Shlomo HaMelech, Al tirsha harbe. What does that mean? Don't be too wicked, eh? Al tirsha harbe. Ve'al tehi sachar. And don't be foolish. Why? Because if you do, lama samus belo itcha. Because you may die early. What's the connection? If I'm going to be a fool, so I'm going to die early? Next pasuk. Toiv asher tochaz bazeh. Ve'gam mizeh al tanaches yadecha. It's good to hold on to this. This must be referring to the previous pasuk. So you should be a little wicked, not too much. Ve'gam mizeh al tanach yadecha. So hold on just also to becoming foolish. Why? Ki yerei Elokim yaitzeh school. God-fearing individual does both. What are you talking about? Chinese. Comes a Metzudas David. I'm telling you where, because you must look it up. Don't trust me. Koheles Perek Zayin Pasuk Yud Zayin Metzudas David. A mitzvah to look it inside. Look at it. I'm quoting. Al tirsha harbe. We thought it means don't be wicked. That's not what it means. Im balecha davar hamacharid. If something came which is scary, al techerad yoiser midai ve'al tebalbel datcha. Be afraid, but not too much. Al tirsha harbe. Don't be too scared. You can be a little scared. Ve'al tehisachal. Don't be a fool. Meaning, lebilti hergish klum badavar hamachid. Oh, I don't feel it. I don't know what to talk about. Not afraid at all. Why? Because you may die too young. What's the connection? Because one who is too scared, the fear itself can kill him. And one who says, well, nonsense, I don't care. So he's not going to run to the shelter. He's not going to run to the mamad. He's not going to take means to protect himself, and he may die early. So what's the right thing to do? It's good to hold on to both. Why? One who is God-fearing individual, he's yoytze yedei shneim, to be scared a little, and to also strengthen your heart to say, well, I'm not worried. Because one who is extremely scared, it's as if he removes his bitachon from Hashem. Hashem can't protect me, so therefore he's very scared. One who says, I don't care about it, it's as if he is not worried about the gzeira of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he sent to you. So why would he wake up to do tshuva? Why would he change his ways? It comes from Shlomo Melech, you have to be a little scared, and ignore a little, and make sure you just do the right thing, which is, daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, do tshuva, and with that, the mitzvah we will be protected. Last pasuk, Ovadia, Perek Aleph, pasuk Yud Zayin, Uvehar Tzion Tiye Pleita. Vehaya Kodesh. This is the pasuk the Ponevezh Rav engraved on the walls of the Ponevezh Yeshiva till today. In Har Tzion shall be remnant, and it shall be holy. The pasuk in Yeshaya, Perek Dalet, pasuk Gimel says, Vehaya Hanishar Betzion. Those who remain here in Eretz Yisrael. Ve'anoisa b'Yerushalayim. Kadosh Ye'amer Loi. He is called holy. Kol HaKasuv L'Chaim. One is inscribed for Chaim. Where is that? Bi Yerushalayim. Mitzvah Hashem. We should be zoiche that all of us will be called holy in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Klal Yisrael. We'll come back. Kibbutz Nidachim Mitzvah Hashem B'Karo B'Yameinu, and we'll see this war ending with a tremendous victory. B'Binyan Beis Hamidash B'Karo B'Yameinu. Amen ve'amen.